Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on when you're listening to this. My name is Yolana Wassersag. I'm the Recruitment and Admissions Manager at the University of King's College. Thank you so much for logging in to join us for this webinar, which is all about undergraduate entrance scholarships. I will be here to answer your questions, and I'm joined by another very helpful expert, Tim, who is the Vice President of King's. Tim, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Welcome and nice to meet you virtually.
It's really good to be here. We're going to try to give you a lot of information in a relatively short period of time. I just want to reassure you this webinar is being recorded. So if you need to run off or if your Wi-Fi disappears, don't worry. Everyone who registered for this webinar will get a link, a video with a link to the recording, uh, a link with the video to the recording, whatever, a couple days after this session, so you can, check in on the information again. We're also doing a whole other session about webinars again early in February with the same information over. Um, Before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge doing webinars like these feels a little odd because we're in this virtual space all together. I know that you can see and hear me, but I cannot see or hear you. So it feels a little bit like talking into the void. So I just want to kind of ground us in place for a moment. I am here on the King's campus. It's 8 p.m. here in Halifax and very dark outside. It's nice and cozy in my quiet office. Tim is just a floor above in his office. And we are in Mi'kma'ki. The University of King's College is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. If you have the opportunity to visit Mi'kma'ki, if you aren't from here, or if you already live in this territory, I hope you take the time to learn about this rich culture that surrounds us here at King's. Um, we also acknowledge the really important legacy of African Nova Scotian people who've been in this land for over 400 years. You may be joining me from another part of the country or indeed an international location. If you want to take a minute, you don't have to, no pressure. But if you want to say hello in the chat and let us know where you're from, that always makes it feel a little bit more like there's people in the room with us. And I can see some familiar names online in the attendee list right now. So if I've met you before, it's really nice to see you again. This is the game plan for this evening. I'm going to share my screen and take you to the King's website and show you a little bit of information about where you can find more details about scholarships. We'll talk about entrance awards, both general entrance awards and what we call major awards. One thing we aren't going to touch on quite as much today is financial aid, student loans, that kind of thing. We actually are running a whole other webinar all about that subject later in March in the spring. But that information isn't as deadline sensitive as the information about scholarships. So that's why we're doing the scholarships part first and the financial aid part second. I'm going to do a little bit of talking about the admissions process and what to expect with the application. And then I'm going to turn things over to Tim, who's going to talk a little bit about the often daunting, but don't be afraid, an essay component, which is part of the scholarship application as well. So I'll share my screen and take you to the King's website. So hopefully you can all see my screen now. This is if you go to ukings.ca, this is what you'll find. And if you're looking for information about scholarships, the way to navigate there is to go to the admissions tab in the main menu, and then select finances, and then go to scholarships and awards. And the purpose of this webinar today is to talk about scholarships for new undergraduate students. So if you're tuned in for this webinar, hopefully you're someone who has already applied or is thinking about applying to King's for a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science, a Bachelor of Music, or a Bachelor of Journalism honors program. Those are the undergraduate programs that we offer. I will say we also have graduate programs at King's. We're not going to be touching on those scholarships in this webinar, but we have other info sessions to talk more about those graduate programs. So if you're looking for information about those, head right here. And there's also scholarships that exist at King's for current students, returning students, and even for students who are on their way out the door and are graduating. So I encourage you to explore those tabs as well. But this is where we're going to focus today, the information for new undergraduate students. There are two types of scholarships that are available for entering students at King's. The first is what we call a general entrance scholarship. And if you scroll down, you'll see the other category, which are the major entrance scholarships. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of these today. Before I do that, I just want to demystify a little bit of university technology terminology. So universities often use the word scholarships. Another term you might hear get thrown around at universities is bursary. These two words are related to each other, but they don't quite mean the same thing. So a scholarship is an award that's given by a university in recognition of merit. So you achieve a scholarship by your accomplishments. Sometimes your strong grades are the reason you're getting a scholarship. Sometimes your extracurriculars are the reason you're getting a scholarship. It might be an activity you're involved in, like playing a varsity sport, or getting really involved in theater. That is the reason you're being given a scholarship, some combination of those factors. And some of the scholarships at King's combine your merits and achievements with qualities about who you are as a person, like ethnicity or the community that you're from. That's what makes it a scholarship a scholarship. It's merit-based. The difference between that and a bursary is that bursaries are based on financial need. So at King's, we have both scholarships and bursaries, and those two things can stack on top of each other. A student can earn a scholarship and also receive a bursary and have both of those things. This webinar is going to really focus more on those scholarships, but I just want to acknowledge that the bursaries also exist. There's a lot of information about them on our website, and we'll be doing a whole other webinar on March 26th to really dig into those financial aid pieces like bursaries. So two types of scholarships we offer. General entrance scholarships are the first. General entrance scholarships, I usually describe these as the really straightforward, simple, you don't have to do any extra work scholarship. This is about as easy as it gets. There is no separate application form to be considered for a general entrance scholarship. All you need to do is apply to King's before March 1st. So there is a deadline to keep in mind. You need to submit your application to the university before March 1st, and you'll be considered. This is open to any high school student, any secondary student who's going to be applying for admission to an undergraduate program. Unfortunately, transfer students are not eligible for general entrance scholarships. Um, this is inclusive of all secondary students from anywhere. So I often get questions from international students about what scholarships they're eligible for. I just want to be clear, general entrance scholarships are open to local students, students out of province, and students internationally. They are just based on your grades. So we're not going to factor in things like extracurriculars at all in this scholarship process. We're just basing it on your admissions average. Your admissions average is the average of the classes that we actually look at when we admit you to the university. So we don't look at your entire high school average. We're not calculating this grade based on every single high school class you've taken. We are just calculating this admissions average based on the courses that are required to be considered for admission. Typically at King's, that will be something like a grade 12 English class and 4 other academic subjects. Or if you're applying to a Bachelor of Science, that'll be something like grade 12 English, pre-calculus math, and 3 other academic subjects. So we're averaging together 5 classes from your high school transcript. And as you can see from my handy chart, if your average is at least an 80, you are guaranteed a scholarship. They start at $1,000 for your first year award, and they go all the way up to $5,000 for the students with the really strong grades. You'll find out that you're getting one right on your admissions letter. So if you've applied to the university already and received an admissions letter from us, you might have already been granted a scholarship. And if so, congratulations. The scholarship is right there on your admissions letter. And if you accept your offer of admission by paying a deposit, you're also by default accepting the scholarship. So those two things are connected. The other thing I'll note about these general entrance scholarships is that they are renewable. And that means that if you're receiving an entrance scholarship, you are going to be considered for additional scholarship funds in your second year, your third year, and your fourth year of study, just based on your grade point average. For almost every other year of study, the grade point average that we need to give you a renewable scholarship is a 3.7 GPA. But a lot of students who come to King's are doing our unique and quite special first year program, the foundation year program, or FIP for short. And we know that foundation year program has a reputation for being a rigorous first year program and one that is hard work for students, but really, really rewarding to do, one where you can learn a lot through the process of being in that program. Just to acknowledge the way the foundation year program is, you'll notice that a GPA of 3.3 or higher is what is needed to be considered for those renewable awards going into second year. So I think that's the general entrance awards covered, but I just want to stress there's going to be opportunities for questions later, and if you have questions about general entrance scholarships, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to move us on to the main event here, which are the major entrance scholarships. As you can see on my website, we're highlighting this event. Thank you for being here on November 13th for this webinar. And I'll note we have another one coming up where we're going to redo all of this information on February 3rd. So if you have a friend who missed it and you want to tell them about it, it's not too late. I'm going to kind of walk us through these major scholarships and we'll talk about how you apply. The general application process for these scholarships is that if you've already submitted or you're planning to submit an application to King's for admissions, you'll notice that on our application form, there's a section where you can indicate which scholarships you're interested in. There's little check boxes that you can tick if you want to be considered for one of these awards. And when you check those check boxes off and then submit your application, you'll see an application status portal, which is a useful portal that you can go to see updates about your application and information about next steps. And there's a tab right in that portal that says My Scholarships, where you'll find the major awards application. So you can select more than one scholarship that you want to be considered for. Most of them have the exact same application form. You don't need to fill out the application form multiple times. You can fill out the application form once and be considered for all of the scholarships that you've selected you'd like to be considered for. These scholarships each have unique sets of criteria. So you'll notice that these are little pop-out menus that have a lot more information. I'm going to walk us through pretty quickly so you can see what they're all about. So the Sobey Scholarship, which has a total value of $50,000, is the most valuable scholarship that we offer at King's. And you'll notice that for each of the awards, we list which programs of study are eligible. So in this case, students entering any program can be considered for the Sobey Scholarship, and we give preference to students entering the foundation year program. This is one of the awards that we offer that's not eligible for international students, so it is only for Canadian citizens with preference given to Atlantic Canadian students. You can see more information about the annual value, if it's renewable, how many years it lasts, how many of them are available. So in the case of the Sobey Scholarship, there are 2 students who will receive this award each year. It'll also clarify if a scholarship essay is required, and I'm going to turn things over to Tim in a little while to talk a little bit more about that essay and the essay topic. So that's the Sobey Scholarship, and you'll see that there's some variations here in the information with each of the awards. The Ralph and Carrie Wright Memorial Scholarship, which is valued at $39,000, is open to all applicants, and this one doesn't have a citizenship requirement. So this is one that I especially like to highlight if I'm talking to international students. If you're not from Canada, this is one of the major awards that you are eligible for, and you should certainly consider applying for it, but Canadian students are also very welcome to apply. The Deborah Dean Little and Robert Little academic scholarships are quite a special scholarship at King's for a couple reasons. One of those reasons is that we have 14 of them to give away each year. So this is, these are some of the largest quantity of scholarships that we have at King's. Another special feature of the Deborah Dean Little and Robert Little academic scholarships is that they are both an academic and athletic scholarship, which is a little bit unusual. A lot of universities have athletic scholarships. A lot of universities have academic scholarships. Not that many universities combine the two in this way. So for these awards, you do not need to write an essay, but you do need to be recommended by the director of athletics. I often get questions from students about what does that mean? How do I get a recommendation from the director of athletics? So I can explain exactly how you go about that. You might want to click on athletics here to visit our page with all of our varsity athletics programs. And you'll notice that all of our sports are listed here. The Kings Blue Devils have been having a great year so far. It's been pretty exciting to watch. So if you're interested in one of these sports, I encourage you to check it out. Just for the purposes of this webinar, I'll be a women's soccer athlete today. And you'll notice that on each sport, there's a recruitment page. So if you're interested in one of our varsity sports, I would encourage you to take a moment to fill out the recruitment form for that sport. By doing this, the coach for that team will get in touch with you You'll be connected to that coach. You'll have an opportunity to ask them questions about things like tryouts and practices and team culture and all of those things. But also filling out this form will put you on their radar so they know that you're interested in one of those varsity athletic awards. That's really important. That's kind of the first step in the process. Okay. So for the Deborah Dean Little and Robert Little academic scholarships, as I said, no essay component required, but you do need that reference or that recommendation from the director of athletics. Then we get into some awards that are designed to provide equity and support to students from groups that are not always represented, equally represented on our campus, and we really want to make sure that university is accessible. So the Dr. Carrie Best Scholarship is open to Black, Canadian, and Indigenous students. Um, and that's one that we encourage you to consider if you're eligible. Similarly, the Gordon Earl Scholarship, which is valued at $24,000, is open to African Nova Scotian students. And then we get into a few others that have some unique criteria. The Harrison McCain Scholarship is one award where we're recognizing your academic achievements, but also documented financial need is a component of this award. And you'll see that if you apply for this one, the application form will ask some questions about your financial need in order to assess that. The Colin Starnes Award is open only to Nova Scotian students. So for any of the Nova Scotians who are online right now, I encourage you to apply. And then the Sylvia D. Hamilton Award, this is another award that is open to African Canadian students with preference given to African Nova Scotian students, and there's up to 5 of them available. It tends to lean towards our journalism programs. And students applying to graduate programs are also eligible for this award. So these are the major awards where you'll indicate on your application form that you're interested in applying. I'll just highlight briefly that there's a few other awards you might want to be aware of that are a little further down the page. So one important one where there is no application necessary is the International Mobility Award. This is a one-time award that provides a $10,000 tuition discount for international students who are entering King's in 2026. There is no application necessary. If you are indicating on your application that you are an international student who, lives abroad and is also not a Canadian citizen, so someone who will need to get a study permit in order to enter Canada, um, uh, then you are just going to automatically be considered for this award. The exclusion here that I just want to highlight is if you are a student in the Nova Scotia International Student Program, or NSISP for short, you're not eligible for the International Mobility Award, and that's because if you're a student in NSISP, you're eligible to pay domestic tuition instead of international tuition. So that's also already a very substantial cost savings. There are some specific awards that are aimed at students who are hoping to sing or perform with the King's Choir. So you can check those out and learn more about them if you are a choral singer or an organ player. If you are really passionate about theater, you might want to be considering the King's Theatrical Society Award, where one of the criteria is that you have demonstrated service and initiative within your local theater community. And there's a couple that are quite specific and niche that I want to highlight. The Prep Academy is a local nonprofit organization and a registered charity that supports African Nova Scotian students. A student who is connected to this program is eligible for a $1,500 award. And the Humanities for Young People Entrance Award is one that's brand new this year. If you're a student who's previously done the summer program for teens that we run at King's, which is called Humanities for Young People, it's a program that's on our campus each July. It's for people who are 15 to 17 years old. It's a lot of fun. If you've previously done that program or plan to in the future, you'll be automatically granted an additional $1,500 award on top of any other scholarships you might be eligible for. So all of those awards are available for you to explore. You can apply for more than one. You can apply for as many as you are eligible. I want to take a minute to talk about this essay question and turn things over to Tim. I just want to highlight again, not every scholarship requires the essay, but many do. So the ones that require the essay are the Colin Starnes Award, the Harrison McCain Award, the Gordon Earl Scholarship, the Dr. Carrie Best Scholarship, the Carrie and Ralph Wright Memorial Scholarship, and the Sobey Scholarship. All of those major awards require an essay in order to be considered. And I know I'm sure we're already getting some questions in the chat, so I'll be sure to loop around to those. But before I do, Tim, I think I'll turn things over to you to speak to our essay topic this year.
Sure. Thanks, Yolana, and again, welcome everyone. I'm Tim Curry. I'm Vice President here at King's, which is basically Vice President Academic at a lot of other universities, and I'm Chair of the Scholarship Committee, which reviews the applications that we receive. So Yolana described the applications as sometimes daunting to put together. Hopefully not. So let's talk a bit about how not to make the scholarship applications an anxiety-inducing experience. So I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes here, hopefully to demystify the process and also describe how you can strengthen your essay. So first of all, the scholarship committee reviews the applications, and the scholarship committee is made up of full-time faculty. And these are usually faculty who teach in first year. So these are instructors in the foundation year program and journalism, which the vast majority of you will take in first year. So in some ways, your scholarship application is a direct appeal to your future instructors. And think of it that way. Yeah, the question on the screen there that Yolana has for us, the question starts off with a quote. There are no facts, only interpretations. So what might this mean? We're not necessarily looking for a right answer here. We're not really looking for you to take a strong agree or disagree position. You might actually have a bunch of conflicting thoughts. You might have questions. You might recall a book you read a couple of years ago. These are all good things to consider. So the main thing we want you to do is to answer the question as a human being. So respond to the question, not just what you think, but how you think. What experiences led you to this position? Where are you coming from? So feel free to talk about your own background. We do want to get to know you a little. And one of the joys of faculty is meeting you in September and talking about where you came from and how you got in here and recalling something you wrote in the scholarship essay. So the last question you'll see on the last sentence, excuse me, you'll see in the question states the strongest papers will examine the claim from more than one angle and show evidence of creative thinking and express ideas in clear, structured, and interesting ways. So nuance can be a strength, right? Strong writing with an argument, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to ignore alternative arguments. So you can look at the question from more than one side. Most of the ideas discussed in foundation year program are pretty complex ones. So those depend on you interpreting ideas from different perspectives. So you can kind of start with that in your scholarship application. Good idea is to give the paper some structure. Start with a thesis statement, then move quickly to an argument. Avoid cliches when you're putting this together. Please don't start your essay with, Professor Pointyhead at Ivory Tower University defines a fact as an evidence-based assertion that, blah, blah, blah. No, don't do that. Your goal isn't necessarily to put us to sleep. For goodness sake, don't write in the third person. Don't, when he was just 11 years old, Tim Curry thought he knew everything there was to know about facts. No, don't do that either. That's we've seen that 100 times. So just make it sincere, play it straight, and give us a sense of who you are. We don't want you to include citations, so don't look up research on facts. Don't include a bunch of links to the European Journal of Provable Information or whatever journal that is. I just made that up. This isn't a research paper per se. We don't want footnotes or anything like that at the end. And, don't wait until the deadline. It's a good idea to let your argument simmer for a while and then come back to it later. It's often stronger if you can think about it for a while and come back to it. But you can talk to a teacher or a mentor. You can read a draft to your cat. There's no requirement that you put this application together in isolation. So take advantage of the people around you. Don't use AI, bland rhetoric with lots of M dashes. That's not really what we're looking for. We want a sense of you, and I don't think ChatGPT is going to do a lot of that unless you upload your life history or something. Don't go over the word limit. Ilana, it's 500 words, I believe. Yep. And I don't think you can go over the word limit. I think the form is going to restrict you to 500 words. So be concise. Don't be terribly wordy. And last but not least, the deadline is March 1st, and that's at 11:59 Atlantic time. So if you live farther west, you've got a couple hours, an hour more to put that together.
Thank you, Tim. That was very helpful. I noticed there's some questions already in the Q&A. One of those questions was, how strict is that 500 words? Is that the maximum or the minimum? That is the maximum. Don't go over the 500 words. And as Tim said, the text box on the application form will not allow you to pass that minimum. I think in some ways, it's more challenging to write something that's pretty strong, that's quite short. In some ways, it's easier to not be concise. So, that 500 words, we know that that's not a lot of words, and that makes it a little more challenging, which is all the more reason, I think, to start early and revise and read things over, and pare down where you can. Uh, yeah, 'cause that's the 500 words. There are a couple other questions that I'm seeing pop up in the Q&A, and I want to address those. But before we do, now that we've talked about, reading through the information on the website to figure out which awards you're eligible for and getting your essay topic together, the next thing that I think is worth mentioning is what happens next. So I just want to highlight that as Professor Curry said, the scholarships are assessed by the scholarship committee, which is made up of faculty at King's. The deadline is March 1st, and the committee is going to meet and start discussing these scholarships shortly after March 1st, quite soon after March 1st. That's a lot of work. They have a lot of things to read. So you're not going to hear back instantaneously. It's going to take a little bit of time. They actually do read all of these scholarships, and all of these scholarship essays, and all of these applications. So it takes a little bit of time. But based on my previous year's experience, we're usually getting back to people in early April. So it's usually taking about a month to sort through all of this. I'll also just highlight some of these awards are assessed only at King's by the Internal Scholarship Committee. But two of the awards, we also send a short list to the foundation that provides the funding to make the scholarship possible, and they also get to take a peek and be involved in making the decision. So the Sobey scholarship gets sent out to the Sobey Foundation, and the Harrison McCain scholarship gets sent out to the McCain Foundation, the people who are shortlisted. And because of that, those two awards, it sometimes takes us a little longer to have a final decision about who will be offered an award. If you are selected for an award, you will find out with an actual good old-fashioned phone call. So just be aware of that. A phone call will come your way. We will make absolutely every effort to get in touch with you. And the other thing you should know is if you're not selected for award, you won't hear that. So we're not reaching out to absolutely every person to let people know if they aren't selected for one of these scholarships. So please keep that in mind as well. But if you have questions, you can always reach out and ask, and we'll tell you what's going on. So I see that quite a few questions are popping into the chat here. So why don't we see how many of these questions we can tackle? Okay, so our first question here is, what counts as financial need? Is there a specific income level you need to be under? So I think this question is with regard to the Harrison McCain Scholarship, which is the one where we ask questions about financial need. No, there's no specific income level that we will make public that a family needs to be under in order for a student to be considered for the McCain Scholarship. I will say that on the application form, the McCain Scholarship is the only one where we ask about the income of parents and guardians. So parents and guardians need to be involved in the process of a student completing this application. We also ask questions on that application about how many dependents there are in the household and how many of those dependents will be enrolled at university or college. So we're trying to assess, if a family is paying university tuition for multiple children, for example, as part of that application. There's a section there where you can kind of describe um, the circumstances of your family. And again, these things are really, they vary a lot, student to student. So there's no specific guidelines or income here. It's just you're generally trying to provide information that helps the scholarship committee and the McCain Foundation understand a picture of your finances. Sorry, that's such a vague answer, but that's what's happening. Uh, the next question on the list here is this the only essay that we would need to write for these scholarships? And the answer is yes, this is the only essay. There's only one essay question on the application form, and for this year, it's this one. Now, if you're listening to this webinar and you're someone who's like in grade 11 right now, and you're thinking of applying to King's, not for September 2026 admissions, but maybe you're looking ahead to September 2027 admissions, please note, this will not be the same essay question next year, or the year after that. We switch up the essay questions. So, the same basic advice applies, but the actual question will change year to year. On the application form, this is the only essay question that has a full 500 words, but there are other questions on the application form that have shorter answers. So there will be places on the application form where you can write about things like extracurriculars that you're passionate about, how you hope to contribute to the King's community, that type of thing. So there's some shorter answers as well as the longer essay question. Um, Oh, the next question on the list is what other information is required included in the scholarship application? I think I just spoke to this. So, there's some shorter answer questions. There's some of them are about things like extracurriculars. Like I said, some of them are about things like how you hope to contribute to the King's community. It's not a long application form. So, it's worth it to spend time kind of getting your essay the way you want it. But overall, the major awards application probably won't be something that takes you a very long time to fill out. The other questions on it are pretty short and straightforward. How do you apply for the King's Theatrical Society and where would I see the form? Great question. The King's Theatrical Society scholarship, if you indicate on your application form to King's that you're interested in being considered, you'll see the application form in your application status portal. Um, it is a very short application form, but you need to upload a theatrical resume. So if you're someone who's been doing a lot of theater, maybe through your school, maybe through community organizations, get your resume together because you're going to submit it as part of the King's Theatrical Society scholarship application. So far, those are the only questions in the queue, but there might be more. So I'm going to give it a moment or two. Just to see if any other questions trickle in. So far, all of the questions that have been asked have been excellent. You'll also notice on the scholarships page that there are some frequently answered questions right there, which are handy dandy. I'd encourage you to check them out. Oh, one thing that I think, because we're doing this in a slightly different way this year with the way we've set up the status portal. So one thing I'll highlight is if you applied to King's already and you didn't check those little boxes to say you want to be considered for one of these scholarships, but now you've tuned into this webinar and you realized you're actually eligible for one of the scholarships and you'd like to be considered, you can have us go back and change that for you. So if you email admissions@ukings.ca, and you'll reach the folks in my office, we can make sure that you get the right scholarship application form in your status portal, even if you didn't originally indicate that you wanted to be considered. So keep that in mind as well. There's one more question in the chat here that says, for the question about on the application about challenges you may encounter at King's, what would some examples be? This is a good question. It's like almost everything with our scholarship process, the answer is going to be very personal to you. So, I can give lots of examples, but they may not be relevant to you specifically, the person who's asking this question. Um, a person might speak about the challenges of moving away from home for the first time. A person might speak about the challenges of managing uh, a new financial circumstance of balancing a budget while they're at university for the first time. Um, a person might speak about challenges they anticipate with doing an interesting and rigorous academic program, for example. So lots of different things that could be relevant, but again, the right answer on that application form is going to be one that's really personal to you. Um, there is another question in the Q&A here that says, you mentioned that the grade average is English plus 4 academic classes. Are these grade 11 or grade 12 classes? Great question. Right now, on the day that I'm speaking this, which is November 13th, we're in what's called the early admissions period. The early admissions period goes from when applications opened back in October all the way till the end of January. So during this time of year, the early admissions period, if you apply to King's, we will look at any final grade 12 level grades that you have, but you probably don't have that many final grade 12 level classes because you're currently in grade 12 right now. So during the early admissions period, we actually look back at your grade 11 classes and we use those as a way to predict how we think grade 12 is going to go for you. So if you apply during the early admissions period, we're going to be looking at some grade 11 marks. If you wait until after the first semester of grade 12 is done and you apply, let's say in February with your first semester grade 12 marks, we're just going to be looking at grade 12 level marks. I want to stress there's no downside to you to applying during the early admissions period. We think applying during the early admissions period is a great idea. If you apply during the early admissions period and we don't have enough grades to look at to make a decision, we're not going to reject applicants. What we're going to do is just hold on to your application and wait until we have your first semester grade 12 grades. So applying during the early admissions period will involve us looking at your grade 11 marks, but it's not a downside at all. And with regard to these general entrance awards, this is a great question because I should have said this up front. If you apply during the early admissions period and let's say your admissions average is a 88% and we offer you a $2,000 entrance award, and then come February, you send us an up-to-date transcript with your first semester grade 12 marks and you've pulled your grades up and now your average is a 90.5, we will bump you up from $2,000 to $3,000. So we will reassess your grades at the mid-year mark. And if we can bump people up, we will bump them up. You also don't need to worry because we never bump anyone down. So we're either going to give you the scholarship we initially offered you, or if we can, we will bump you up, but nobody's getting bumped down. So that's another reason that there is no downside to applying during the early admissions period. The next question that's listed here is, where do we submit the essay for the scholarship, in the actual application or on the website? You submit it in the scholarship application, which you'll see in your application status portal. So after you've submitted an application for admissions to King's, you'll have access to your status portal and you'll see a little form in there that says major awards application. And it all gets submitted there and linked together so that, you know, the information's not lost. King's is a little old fashioned. It wasn't all that long ago that we used to do this with like PDFs that we printed out in hard copy. This is actually one of the first years that we're using our application stats portal properly to make sure that all of your applications are all in the same place. So it's also a new process for us this year, but so far it's been working great and really seamlessly. So even if you're not totally sure where it all is now, just keep moving through the process. Submit your application, go to your status portal, and you'll see right there where the scholarship application is. And if you're having any trouble at all and you want to reach out with a specific question, you can always email me and my team. I'm going to pop that email address in the chat. So it's admissions@ukings.ca if you have, you know, specific questions. Okay. Doing great. Flying through lots of good questions. Thank you so much for asking them.
Anna has one in the chat there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I see another one here that says, if we do receive a scholarship, when do we find out the total amount we owe for tuition? Great question. we'll make sure that so later in the spring we'll be sending students a more detailed kind of total financial package letter that'll include any scholarships you're eligible for, and it'll also include any bursaries that you may be eligible for as well. So that will all come to you kind of in the later part of the spring. Once you have made up your mind that you're coming to King's, if you pay your admissions deposit and register for your classes, course registration happens usually around June. Um, then like it's late July, early August that you'll have access to your student account, and that's where you'll see the total tuition that you owe for the upcoming semester. And you'll also see where any scholarships or bursaries you've received have been deducted from that tuition. So you'll have access to all of that. Um, and tuition isn't due until after classes start. So tuition for the fall term, tuition is split up by term, so fall, winter. Tuition for the fall term isn't due until about two weeks-ish after classes begin. The exact date is not on the tip of my tongue right now. But the financial aid webinar that I mentioned that we're going to have on March 26th, in that webinar, we'll talk about bursaries, we'll talk about how tuition payments work, we'll talk about how the Canadian student loan process works. Um, and how, the overall kind of payments information. So all of that will be available. Um, the thing to know about bursaries is they're really not as deadline sensitive at King's as scholarships are. So the scholarships are a pretty firm March 1st deadline. You need to apply before March 1st in order to be considered. Whereas when it comes to need-based financial aid bursaries, you can apply at a later date. You can be considered for different kinds of financial aid once you're already at King's. So those aren't quite as deadline sensitive, but you'll be able to see your student account before you arrive on campus. Okay. Before we wrap things up, I'm just going to highlight a few other things on our website that might be useful for you. So, if you're looking to find more information about any of this, admissions in the main menu, finances, scholarships and awards, that's what we're focusing on today. If you hit the financial aid tab, you'll see not just the scholarships page, but more about bursaries, more about student loans. Some applicants are eligible for certain types of tuition waivers, which you can see here, more about on-campus jobs, and a little bit about external funding. I just want to take a minute to talk about external funding. The scholarships we've talked about in tonight's webinar are all the internal scholarships at King's, but I gotta hand it to the students I meet every day. There are students who are really working hard to explore lots of different scholarship opportunities that are available to them. So in addition to scholarships that are offered by King's, I just want to make you aware that there are tons of opportunities for scholarships out there in the world. If you're looking for tips about how to find them, I would encourage you to talk to your parent or guardian about if the place of employment where they work has a like a human resources program or a benefits program where there are scholarships available to the children of employees. A lot of workplaces have that kind of thing. If your parent or guardian or someone else in your family serves in the armed forces or is a veteran, you may be eligible to certain scholarships. If you belong to a religious community of some kind, you might want to talk to your pastor or rabbi or whatever about community-based scholarships that might exist for your community. And if you're a student who has a disability or is part of a specific group, there may be additional scholarships available to you. This last recommendation I have is not officially endorsed by the university. This is an external third-party website that the university is not affiliated with. But I know a lot of students who have had a lot of success finding really good scholarship opportunities on the website Wyconic, where you can put in details about yourself and get matched with various scholarship opportunities. There's also a lot of really great and interesting foundations and charitable organizations that provide scholarships. One that I learned about recently that has a lot of interesting scholarships is the Rick and Amanda Hansen Scholarship for Youth with Disabilities, for example. Again, neither of these are affiliated with the university. I always just like to highlight them because I know that there's students who are out there looking. Before we kind of close up for the night, there are a lot of other things that are happening around Kings these days that you can connect with and check out and find out more about if you're a student who's planning to apply to Kings this year or who maybe has already applied. So on our events page, if you'd like to come hang out with us in person, we're doing the lecture tour, which is a very fun special event. We've already done, unfortunately, you've missed them, our lecture tour events in Victoria, Vancouver, and Calgary. Thank you to anyone who's listening who was at any of those. It was great to see you there. But we still have coming up at the end of this month our lecture tour event in Toronto on November 29th and in Ottawa on November 30th. And at those events, I'll be there to tell you more about Kings. Fred Valens-Jones, who is the director of the journalism programs, will be there. Neil Robertson, who's the director of the Foundation Year program, will be there. If you're really passionate about journalism and you happen to be in or near anywhere near Toronto, come to our Journalism Day event on December 8th. It'll be a great time to connect with faculty and learn more about the journalism programs. And there's so many webinars like this one where you can find out what's going on at King's virtually. So the scholarships webinar is where we are right now. We have a virtual open house or two coming up pretty soon. The financial aid webinar is coming up, and we have more webinars that we will add to our schedule as we move through the year. So there's lots and lots of ways to connect with Kings if you're interested in any of those events. I think we are probably at the end of the questions that have been asked.
There's one in the Q&A
Oh, is
about
there?
accessing a recording.
Oh, great. Thank you for asking that. I had the Q&A closed. Um, yes, everyone who registered for this event is going to get the recording. Give us like 1 or 2 business days because we have to, download it and then upload it to YouTube and then get it ready to send out. But it'll just land in your inbox. You don't need to do any work to get access to this recording. Um, give us a day or two and you will have it. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here tonight and for asking all of your good questions. I'll just reiterate one last time that if you'd like to reach us with more questions, the email address is admissions@ukings.ca. I'm also going to put my personal email address in there. I'm at ilana.wassersug@ukings.ca. I'd be happy to hear from you anytime, really. And Tim, do you have any like last words of encouragement or reassurance for all these lovely folks who are interested in scholarships?
Yeah,
Ready
I
for
mean
the
it's not as difficult or as stress-inducing as you might think. It's a process where hopefully you learn a bit about yourself, putting things down, your experience, and how you think about things, and we learn a bit about you, and it's a great process actually.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for logging in, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.